But we're going to begin tonight with that alleged terror plot and the chilling plan. The FBI says it stopped before it could be carried out. A plan to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and then what they were planning to do to her. 13 suspects arrested, including 7 alleged members of a right-wing militia group. The FBI and state authorities conducting a series of raids in Michigan. Those 13 suspects taken into custody, 7 of them alleged members of that right-wing militia group. Governor Whitmer has been the target of protests since last spring over restrictions aimed to stop the spread of COVID amid one of the early outbreaks. Michigan, of course, a hot spot at the time. Today, Governor Whitmer thanking authorities for protecting her and her family, but went on to talk about white supremacists in this country. And the president, who she pointed out was asked to condemn white supremacists on that debate stage. You'll remember the president saying, "Stand back and stand by." Our Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas leading us off tonight.
The alleged plot nightmarish.
Earlier today, Attorney General Dana Nessel was joined by officials from the Department of Justice and the FBI to announce state and federal charges against 13 members of 2 militia groups who were preparing to kidnap and possibly kill me.
The FBI and state police seen here raiding a home and detaining an individual took action after the men met this week to exchange tactical gear and to pool their money to allegedly buy explosives. The mission? Attack the governor before Election Day. Authorities claim the planning was months in the making, with the men even going to the governor's vacation home twice to conduct surveillance. 2 of the suspects allegedly had a plan to create a diversion.
Discussed detonating explosive devices to divert police from the area of the home.
This was a highly dangerous group. They were well armed, they were training, they had a plan, and they were prepared to carry out their attack.
Well, as I was saying, there are new questions this morning about just how involved the FBI, again, may have been in hatching a plot to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer that they then disrupted with much fanfare. Here's the background here. You will recall in October of last year, the news media exploded with what was truly a sensational story. Right-wing extremists outraged over pandemic lockdowns had been narrowly thwarted in an attempt to kidnap the governor. That's what we were told. Remember this? Storming the state capitol, instigating a civil war, abducting a sitting governor ahead of the presidential election. Those were among the plots described by federal and state officials in Michigan on Thursday as they announced terrorism, conspiracy, and weapons charges against 13 men. At least 6 of them, officials said, had hatched a detailed plan to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer, a Democrat who has become a focal point of anti-government views and anger over coronavirus control measures. That was the report from the New York Times. Now, of course, that narrative really fit the moment. Trump had been going after Whitmer in recent weeks. Tensions were extraordinarily high heading into the November election. In her press conference after the plot was revealed, Whitmer actually blamed Trump for inciting these domestic terrorists.
This should be a moment for national unity, where we all pull together as Americans to meet this challenge head on. Instead, our head of state has spent the past 7 months denying science, ignoring his own health experts, stoking distrust, fomenting anger, and giving comfort to those who spread fear and hatred and division. Just last week, the President of the United States stood before the American people and refused to condemn white supremacists and hate groups like these 2 Michigan militia groups. Stand back and stand by, he told them. Stand back and stand by.
Very quickly, there were some signs that maybe the narrative wasn't quite as clear-cut as the government and media were portraying it. Those warning signs were explained in a now prescient piece by Branko Marcetic, who warned that maybe, just maybe, the FBI was, quote, up to its old Obama-era tricks, helping manufacture the very terrorist plots it ends up thwarting and then publicizing. In particular, Marcetic drew some parallels between this action against right-wing extremists and how the government targeted young Muslim men for entrapment. He noted, for example, that while during the War on Terror, the government would frequently go after the poor or even the developmentally disabled for their entrapment schemes. The supposed ringleader of the Michigan kidnapping plot also seemed to really be at the margins of society. In this case, the alleged head terrorist, a guy named Adam Fox, is very poor. He was nearly homeless. He was living temporarily in the basement of a vacuum store where he held a meeting, supposedly, quote, masterminding this plot. Marcetic also noted that, as was often the case with the Muslim men the FBI entrapped, The accused didn't really seem to have the financial wherewithal to carry out their evil plans without the help of government money. An undercover agent told that ringleader Fox that explosives would cost about $4,000. There is zero indication that the men involved had come close to pooling together that amount of money. Finally, Marcetic noted the extensive use of confidential informants in war on terror entrapment. By 2017, 83% of ISIS-related cases involved undercover agents or informants. Well, now we are learning much more about just how extensive the government's use of confidential informants was in the Michigan kidnapping plot. New court filings in the case suggest the government used at least 12 informants in connection with disrupting this plot. 12. So, just if you're keeping track at home, that's twice as many government informants involved in the plot as there were alleged terrorists. Just if you're keeping track at home, that's twice as many government informants involved in the plot as there were alleged terrorists.